Fellas, this auto rifle is nuts. Not only for my PvP players, but also for my PvE players. You see, this auto rifle was intentionally designed for PvP, but I love that Bungie has given it roles that are extremely desirable for my PvE players. Today, guys, we're going to be going over the Prophecy Refresh weapon Prosecutor. This is a 450 round per minute auto rifle that deals arc damage, and it drops from the very first encounter of the Prophecy dungeon, which is a farmable dungeon this week. Please take advantage of farming Prophecy this week, guys. We just put out a guide. We broke down how to do each and every one of these encounters, and also the loot that drops from each one of the encounters so that you can farm specific encounters for specific weapons. Now, jumping right into Prosecutor though. In its left column, we have Discord, Dragonfly, Gutshot Straight, Keep Away, Rewind Rounds, and Zen Moments. Over in our right column, we have Cascade Point, Frenzy, Golden Tricorn, Tap the Trigger, Target Lock, and Bolt Shot. Now I'm gonna cover PvE first because, yeah, we've got some pretty unique stuff happening here. But keep in mind, PvP players, you're gonna wanna stick around. Prosecutor is arguably the best 450 round per minute auto rifle in the game, and I'm saying this as someone who absolutely loves Tiger's Bite. But for my PvE players, the two traits that really poke out in that third column include Rewind Rounds and Dragonfly. Now, I mainly like them because of the synergy we have between those two traits and the traits in our right column. First up, Rewind Rounds reads that when this weapon's magazine is empty, it refills from reserves based on the number of hits. Now, this refills 60% of its hits. So on Prosecutor with a max size of 38, it procs 2 consecutive times, which results in us shooting a whopping 71 shots before needing to reload. This is such a good trait, especially if you have like a high up target that you're just sitting there blowing your load in. And something about this perk that will be important later is that since it doesn't, quote, overflow the magazine, you can reload whenever you want. Now, the other perk in this column that had my interest is Dragonfly, a classic perk which reads precision kills create an elemental damage explosion. In this case, it's an arc explosion that deals around 12,000 damage to red bars. Now, keep in mind, the damage fall off is steep. The highest we saw though in our testing was 12,605 damage here. And I know Dragonfly is often overlooked, but if you take perks and combinations like Dragonfly and Incandescent, which is present on Tyranny of Heaven, that is a very nasty combo. And I wanted to see if we can get that same level of lethality here with our Prosecutor, which takes us to our traits in our final column. Guys, this is a difficult one because there's actually a lot of intriguing combinations for my PvE players. For instance, you've got Target Lock there, which in combination with Rewind Rounds will allow you to reach that maximum damage buff. Again, Target Lock, in order to reach that highest threshold of damage, you have to achieve 110.5% of the magazine. So you need perks like Triple Tap, 4 times the Charm, Rewind Rounds, in order to feed ammo back into the weapon to reach that buff. The only problem with Target Lock is, again, the damage buff completely falls off when you go from target to target. So even though the damage buff here is really nice at max stacks, the moment you swap to another target, that damage buff is gone. On top of that, if you miss a shot, you also lose the damage buff. Now, the other perks that I really like in this final column include everything, really, like literally everything. Golden Tricorn, also a great trait, especially if you're rocking an arc-based build. Get a single stack going, throw down a grenade, now you got 50% damage buff. You also have Frenzy here, which gives us that 15% increase in damage, amongst other benefits. Cascade, which, listen guys, if you really want to just sit there and blow your load, Cascade, even though it doesn't increase damage, amps up this rate of fire like crazy. You could do a Cascade Rewind Round roll and just unload on everything. Now keep in mind, it doesn't last that long, roughly 2.5 seconds, but it is fun nonetheless. But the perk I think that most people are going to be looking at is Bolt Shot. Reloading this weapon after defeating a target overcharges the weapon for a short period of time, causing it to jolt on its next hit. Now listen, Bolt Shot is obviously an amazing perk. The ability to jolt targets, stun overload champions if you need to. Yes, it's kill activated, but it's nice for spreading out that damage. Now, just like all jolt sources, here at Carl, it's still locked at 6,266 damage, and that changes depending on the type of enemy it hits. For red bars, it's 9,586. No, you're not going to be breaking the bank with Bolt Shot's damage, but it is the synergy that you get from it with Arc 3.0, and the jolt you're able to spread out to multiple targets. Now, from Prosecutor here, you can actually proc jolt damage about every 10 shots due to it having a small internal cooldown. Now, before we jump into the God Roll of this weapon, we need to talk about its origin traits because this is completely new and it's one of the most unique origin traits Bungie has ever given us, and that is this perk right here, Crossing Over. The trait reads, this weapon has increased range and handling for the top half of the magazine, while rounds from the bottom half of the magazine deal increased damage. Now, what's so amazing about this trait is as you're shooting the weapon, notice at the bottom left, it goes from light, which is the top half of the magazine, to dark, indicating the swap here in its benefits, which ties literally into the Prophecy prophecy dungeon, considering the mechanics themselves are you standing in the dark or standing in the light when getting kills on knights. Now, I know we're not necessarily looking for more range inside of PvE, but the increase in damage, we need to talk about that. In dark mode, the bottom half of the magazine was increasing our damage from 2,130 to 2,194, acting similar to high impact reserves. Now, is that a big jump? No. Roughly a 3% increase when it is at max effect, and a 2% increase across the bottom of the magazine. Again, guys, very similar to high impact reserves, where the deeper you go, the better it gets. The question is, does it increase our traits? Things like Dragonfly. It does. Turns out Dragonfly's damage is increased from 12,605 to 12,840, which is really cool here that it transfers, which means it's definitely going to transfer to our other traits. With that being said, though, I do want to mention this does not apply to Volt Shots. Volt Shots damage is still locked at that 6,266 damage. I know, bummer. So with all the desired perks covered and also its origin traits, what is the God Roll here for my PvE players? Well, the first roll that I got was in fact Dragonfly and Volt Shots, which was the trait combination I wanted. Considering that we have crazy synergy with Dragonfly and Incandescent, Dragonfly can actually reproc Incandescent on Tyranny of Heaven, meaning if the Dragonfly damage killed a target, Incandescent would reproc, thus the chaining of explosions. However, what I found here with Volt Shot and Dragonfly is you don't really have that same level of synergy, as these perks act separately. They're not really interacting with each other. Volt Shots, yes, it is spreading its damage, still requires you to get a kill and then reload, whereas Dragonfly is that immediate explosion. Now, are you still getting kabloomies and kills? Yes, you're still getting that, but one is not infinitely chaining the other. Now, is that to say that that trait combination is bad? Absolutely not. It's a great trait combination, and it's very fun, and even though one's not chaining into the other, as in reproccing each other, at the end of the day, after you get a kill and reload, you're spreading jolt damage, which is allowing you to easily get more damage into targets to then land a precision kill on with Dragonfly. However, with that being said, there is another trait combination to be looking for, and that's rewind rounds and Volt Shots. The reason why this combination is so good is that this will allow you to get as many jolt procs as possible. You see, guys, you want as many shots as possible while still being able to reload so that you can reproc Volt Shots whenever you get a kill. And this is what makes rewind rounds so good, is that it's not like overflow. You can reload whenever you need. And if you jolt a big target and then you just sit there and lay into them, rewind rounds will actually give you the most out of that jolt damage. This is a match made in heaven, and I would highly advise getting that roll. Overall, though, guys, for my PvE players, you really can't go wrong. There are a lot of combinations here that I think will make Prosecutor a very good weapon for you. Now, the last thing I'm going to cover is DPS, because I know everyone's going to be like, well, Cross, why would I use this when I have Ikelos at home? It's got Volt Shots, it's craftable. What does Prosecutor have that Ikelos doesn't? Well, both weapons have the same Volt Shot damage, that being that 6,266 per proc, but individually, Ikelos has a DPS value of 21,948. Prosecutor has a DPS value of 16,574, and that's including the 2% buff from crossing over. Now, that's for a single mag DPS. Here's where Prosecutor pulls ahead substantially. It can pump out 153,102 damage without reloading, whereas Ikelos does 56,412 damage before it needs to reload. And this is the beauty of when we get rewind rounds in the mix. Listen, I love Ikelos, and obviously in certain encounters, Ikelos is still going to be better, but there are multiple encounters that are more ranged, especially in GM content. Prosecutor allows you to lay on the trigger if you have that rewind round roll, and if you pair that with Volt Shots, you're going to be chaining that jolt damage over and over. Now on to PvP. PvP players, I just want you to know, you are going to be getting wrecked by this auto rifle, and for good reason. It is a phenomenal weapon. With crossing over, procced, and that increase in range while light is active, a 70 range Prosecutor will start to receive damage fall off at 35 meters, which is really nice because light on crossing over roughly gives us an increase of 1 meter. But what about a dark mode's damage increase? At base, Prosecutor hits 32 damage per crit and 20 damage per body. Keep in mind, guys, we're doing this testing inside of private lobbies, so this is not the new sandbox, but these damage values and the increases will still transfer to the new sandbox. Now with dark active, it still stays at 32 damage per crit, but the body shot damage goes up to 21. Now, does this shift the time to kill value at all? No. And even if we were to sit down and really start testing TTK values, keep in mind, this is the old sandbox. Bungie has not updated private lobbies to the new sandbox. So I don't want to get into these damage values too deeply, as they're just going to change once Bungie makes that change. What crossing over really allows is pretty much to keep that 1 extra meter up at all times. Because despite losing range when it goes from light to dark, that increase in damage will also make up for that loss in range. Now, I think the real question is, what is the God Roll, and how does this weapon perform inside of the new sandbox? Well, this was the roll that I landed for PvP. I got Keep Away and Target Lock, which is phenomenal. Keep Away increases reload, range, and accuracy when no targets are in close proximity, which is really nice here, as that's just a flat plus 10 there in range when targets are outside of 15 meters. And then you have Target Lock. And I know everyone is already scrapping their Target Lock rolls, but guys, Target Lock got nerfed for SMGs. For other weapons, especially auto rifles, it still procs early enough in your magazine for them to be usable inside of PvP. For instance, in the new sandbox, for 4 shots, we're doing 35.536 damage per crit, and that increases to 40.47 after those 4 shots, as well as 22.8 damage per body shot. Now, what does this mean? Without Target Lock, you're looking at a 0.8 time to kill value at tier 10 resilience and below in 6 crits in 1 body. Now, you can actually achieve the 5 crits 2 body in 0.8 seconds, but only at tier 2 resilience and below. However, when we incorporate Target Lock into the mix, it adds a lot of forgiveness. At tier 10 resilience, which again, by the way, is 230 health, you're still sitting at a 0.8 time to kill value in 6 crits in 1 body. But at tier 9 resilience, all the way to tier 6 resilience, you're able to achieve that same TTK value of 0.8 in 5 crits in 2 body. And then at tier 6 resilience, this drops down to 0.67 seconds at 6 crits. TLDR guys, get Target Lock and get Keep Away. The roll that I'm looking for actually includes Hammerforged Rifle, a ranged masterwork, high caliber rounds, Keep Away, and Target Lock. This would roughly put me at 95 range with Keep Away active. That means we have an auto rifle here reaching up to 36.2 meters. And that's before we even include crossing over. Now wait, what about Zim moments? What about tap the trigger? What about some of these other traits? What about gut shot straight? Guys, you can use those things. Zim moments, if you're on controller, if you feel better with that trait, by all means, use Zim moment and Target Lock. But personally, I'm gonna go with the increase in range and the accuracy bump from Keep Away. It's too noticeable. And I don't even have a 5 out of 5 God Roll. This is pretty much only 2 good things on this roll, that being Target Lock and Keep Away. And it was doing so good for me. You pair this with ricochet rounds or high caliber rounds in a decent barrel perk, and you're gonna be cooking. Now, Cross, why not have a barrel perk that increases your recoil direction? Keep in mind, guys, this is already a precision frame. In my opinion, I think the recoil is plenty manageable, meaning you don't have to go out there and kill yourself and go with arrowhead break. Now, matter of fact, you don't even have to use things like counterbalance mod. I'm telling you guys, it's completely manageable. You could just use a base barrel perk that increases your stats, whatever that may be that you want, and then rock like a targeting mod, and you're good. I promise you, you are good. If you feel better with arrowhead break though, I won't stop you. In my opinion though, I don't think it's necessary here. So guys, that is our review there for Prosecutor. The solid weapon inside of PvE and a godly weapon inside of PvP. Target Lock is definitely a perk worth using on this auto rifle. Was it nerfed? Yes, but only on SMGs. Everywhere else inside of PvP, it is still worth using. Guys, if you're interested in farming this weapon or any weapon, we have a Discord. We're also doing live runs with viewers over on our Twitch. Feel free to come by. You can get your diamond medallion and potentially farm you up some God Rolls. So come join us. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.